Rebounds TV with Calvin and Barry. Just two crazy fans of the Sacramento Kings and they sharing their opinion. So be sure that you subscribe. It's for the fans, by the fans. Whether you chilling on the couch or wildin' in the stand. For laid back conversations about the Kings, subscribe here. Staying down until we come up thinking this gon' be our year. We're here, drinking beer, talking about the Kings. Be sure you subscribe so you can hear that bell ring, yeah.
What's up, Kings fans? Welcome back to Royal Rebounds TV, a Sacramento Kings YouTube channel for fans, by fans.
Yeah, welcome in, Royal family. This is the Royal Rebounds Podcast, your daily Sacramento Kings therapy session with Calvin and Barry. On today's show, we'll break down the Kings Raptors, we'll give you our shoulders to cry on, and we'll look ahead to how the Kings can improve this team and get back to winning basketball games. We'll talk more trades. And Isaiah Thomas is back in the NBA for a brief stint. Could be more. We'll find out. First up, time for your nightcap.
We're here. I'm drinking a beer, and we're talking about your Sacramento Kings. If you're a Kings fan, make sure you hit that like button down below. And if you enjoy content like this, consider subscribing to the channel. This is your Sacramento Kings nightcap. Tonight, I am drinking the Black Butte Porter out of Deschutes Brewing Company in Bend, Oregon. And that is exactly what the Kings did tonight, was bend over and get destroyed by the Toronto Raptors. Kings lose 124-101 in Toronto. We got to see Metu and Len start. Horrible start for the Kings, and it didn't get much better. The Kings were down 31 points in this game. They never led in this game. Tyrese Haliburton didn't show up. The Kings gave up 70 points in the first half, and they capped off a 3-game losing streak.
Yes, they did. The tables have turned so quickly after a 3-game winning streak. Here we are, right on the opposite end of the spectrum. And, man, there's honestly just not much to talk about here. The Kings came out and played pretty much the exact same way that we saw them play against Cleveland. One of my keys for this game was transition defense. First 3 baskets the Raptors scored were fast break baskets, wide open layups. Siakam could have crawled to the basket to get the layup, that first basket. And it didn't get any better from there. They just continued to let up fast break points. I think it was 22 for the game. 9 Toronto Raptors in double figures tonight after 7 scored double figures in Cleveland. De'Aaron Fox, 29 points. But other than that, not much to talk about offensively for the Kings.
Not many good things to talk about. 17 turnovers tonight for the Sacramento Kings. The first 5 possessions by the Kings, 4 of them were turnovers. It led to an 11-0 start by the Toronto Raptors, and they never looked back. Cal, you want to take a look at the box score?
Yeah. As I mentioned, De'Aaron Fox leads all Kings scorers with 29 points, added 3 assists and 2 rebounds. Other than that, Alex Len was the only other starter in double figures with 12 points and 8 rebounds, all 8 of his rebounds on the offensive glass. The Kings had an advantage inside in this game and were not able to take advantage of it. They really missed Richaun Holmes. 3 players in double figures off the bench. Buddy Hield, 14 points on 4 of 11 from 3. Tristan Thompson, 11 points in 12 minutes, as well as 7 rebounds. And Marvin Bagley, another double-double off the bench, 12 points, 11 rebounds. The team shot 40% from the field and under 67% at the foul line.
Yes, 6 combined points by Harrison Barnes and Tyrese Haliburton. The Kings aren't going to win any basketball games with this kind of production, not to mention 4 points out of Metu. That is 10 total points out of 3 starters on this squad, 12 for Alex Len, and 14 for Buddy Hield on some bad shooting again. I mean, 4 from 11, it could be worse.
We've seen him do a lot worse than that, but yeah, man, it's just it is what it is right now with this team. They look like a team that is completely deflated to me. I think all of the trade talk that continues to pick up more and more steam might be getting to these guys. Whether or not they feel like they are worried about themselves being traded or not, I think they see the writing on the wall that this team is probably going to look very different here in a month or two.
Yeah, I totally agree. Thanks, everyone that's just joining in now. We're getting a little bit of a late start to tonight's podcast.
Work sucks.
Calvin and I had some work to do today. I do have to give a little confession, though. This is the first Kings game this season that I did not watch the entire game. I was tired of the performance. I shut it off, and I just watched highlights of the rest of the game. And I don't think I missed much.
You did not.
But welcome, Makami, Summer. Good to see you guys there. I also wanted to give a quick shout out to Andy, a new friend of the channel. Andy, just want to say we really appreciate you, all the kind words and all the things that you've done to help us out. We really, really appreciate it. And to the rest of you out there, if you guys want to get in contact with us, you can either hit us up on Instagram or you can go to our YouTube channel page. Down below, there is a contact link to the email address where you can email us anything you want. If you just want to vent.
You can get at us on Twitter as well. I'm usually on there, every day at Royal_Rebounds on Twitter. So I respond pretty quickly to any tweets.
Exactly. Anything you want to talk about in team statistics?
Not really.
We talked about the turnovers. We're going to probably make this section pretty quick tonight just because it was so painful, and then we're going to try and move on to the second section that's going to be a lot more fun. We're going to talk about trades. We're going to talk about a bunch of different things Kings related. So bear with us here.
Right. And I mean, the biggest reason why we're not going to spend much time recapping this game is because it literally is a broken record. It's the same stuff that we've been saying now for the past few games. A lot of the problems they had against Cleveland, they had again tonight. Transition points, fast break points, really, really just lazy not being able to get back on defense. There were a ton of missed layups by the Kings in this game. We already talked about Harrison Barnes and Tyrese Haliburton struggling. One of my biggest issues with this game is when you're struggling to score so much, you have to put your best players or your best scorers in a good position to do that.
Yep.
Tyrese only took 2 shots today. There's just no excuse for me for him to only take 2 shots in a game where they are struggling to score so much and only get 100 points or 101 points.
And he had opportunities that he passed up.
Opportunities.
Yep.
But that's the thing is even if he doesn't have these wide open opportunities, he should be more aggressive. He should be looking to create something more for himself, even if it's not there. There would be situations where I could say, oh, well, that was a bad shot, but at least he's trying to force the issue a little bit here because they need to get something going offensively.
And we just didn't have any of that tonight.
You never saw
this team gave up. They basically rolled over in this game, which is really, really unfortunate. I know it's, tough little road trip that they're on, playing a bunch of games, getting whooped. This team was so close. They were 2 De'Aaron Fox free throws away from a 4-0 record and moving closer towards that playoff picture. Those both don't go down. They lose at the Hornets. Then they lose the game against Cleveland, and then they lose again tonight, which just kind of is just sums up this Kings team, right, as they just give up. Unfortunately, it hurts me to say that, but it's very, very true.
It is a very unfortunate thing to have happen. But, yeah, I mean, you look around the league and even the teams that are not at the top of their respective conferences, if they were to have a game like that game in Charlotte, which was a heartbreaking loss, they would all, rally around each other, find a way to come back and at least put forth a solid effort for a full game, not one half.
Yep.
I mean, giving up, however many points it was in the first half against Cleveland, even though they came back and only allowed 36 in the second half, which is what they gave up in the entire first quarter. That's good and all, but it has to be a full 48 minutes. It has to be a collective effort. You have to find a way to snap out of that lazy, lackadaisical mentality quicker. It just has to happen quicker because now it is snowballed into something that they may have trouble stopping for a long time.
Yeah, and you got to stop giving up 40-point quarters. They really destroy you. And when you only score 23 points in a quarter, you can't have those lapses on both ends of the floor at the same time. Yeah. I do want to talk about a couple quick positives from this game. There's not a lot, so this is going to be pretty quick. But De'Aaron Fox, 29 points, 6 of 7 from the free throw line, 11 of 20 tonight. He was the only King that was aggressive and looking to get his shot. He's been playing pretty well over these past couple games, so I like what I've seen from him. I would like to see him shoot a little bit better from three-point range, 1 of 5 tonight. But De'Aaron Fox, I guess you could say he's turned it around. There was a lot of people doubting him earlier on in this season. The Kings were actually winning some games, and he wasn't playing that well. Now they're losing games, and he is playing well. So I just want to say I like what I've seen out of De'Aaron Fox on the offensive end of the floor. Not so much defensively, but offensively. And then also I want to give a little shout-out to Alvin Gentry. You know, it might be weird that I'm shouting out a coach after getting destroyed by the Toronto Raptors, but watching his post-game press conference, he didn't throw anybody under the bus. He said, this is on me. He said, you know, I need to be better. I need to find a better way to prepare these guys. Whether that's the truth or not, I don't know. But, you know, a coach willing to say that and take the blame for his team is big. And one thing he did say was, he said, you know, when I get to the point where I say there's nothing else I could do to prepare these guys, and it is on the players, that's a bad coach. And so I don't think Doc Rivers felt the same way about Ben Simmons last postseason, but I just want to give a shout out to Alvin because I think he's a true professional.
Yeah.
Any positives you want to throw in there, Cal?
Nah, I like what you said. You know, it's really hard to take a bunch of positives away from this game and these past couple of games. As I mentioned, it has snowballed into something that has been just really ugly to watch. Normally, or not normally, but a lot of times we watch these games like the Charlotte game. They scored a bunch of points. Mm-hmm. They made it entertaining. They made it close, and there were so many other things that you didn't like there down the stretch defensively. They couldn't close anything out, but that is because they usually put forth a good offensive effort.
Yep.
And are able to keep games close, even games that you wouldn't expect them to keep close.
Mm-hmm.
And these last two games, it's really just been a whole lot of nothing.
Yep.
So it's unfortunate.
Jeff the Lefty says, why can't Fox light a fire under the rest of the starters?
Yeah. Well, because they lack talent, Sass, I'm sorry. I even if the statement is true, you can still light a fire under somebody if they don't have talent. Yeah, like I see what you're saying. Maybe it won't do anything in the long run.
Mm-hmm.
But that's part of the problem, right? Is that there's a lack of talent and you don't have the effort to go into that. When you're not as talented of a team, your effort has to be tenfold more so that you can compete on a nightly basis.
Yeah, and I'm also going to say, who are the starters on this team? Like, really, you look at the starting lineup, all these guys have missed games other than Fox and Haliburton. It's hard to develop chemistry. It's hard to light a fire under players when you constantly have people going in and out of the starting lineup. You know, we saw Len starting tonight. We saw Metu starting. Obviously, Rashawn is out with an injury. But, you know, we saw Marvin Bagley start before. We saw Terrence Davis start before. You know, we've seen other guys step in and out of this role. So it's hard to get anything going when you don't have consistency.
True. Very true.
Charlie says, because this is real life and they are grown men. This isn't some remember the Titans bullshit. Yeah. I'm disappointed in Haliburton, honestly, man. I'm looking at your comment here. Hallie's constantly yelling and screaming, but we still play sucky. Haliburton didn't do much tonight either. He only had 3 points, took 2 shots. This isn't the first game this year that I've seen a lack of aggressiveness from him. When I see the aggressiveness from him, I love it, but he's not doing it consistently. And we have these games where he just seems like he'd rather pass the ball to somebody else every single time. Even if you're open and you give up an open shot for a contested shot later in the shot clock, which is not a recipe for success.
Definitely not.
All right. Anything else you want to talk about in the game here, Cal? Davion, we could talk about Davion. 26 minutes tonight, 8 points from him. He hit 2 threes. You see anything you liked out of him?
Yeah, I just continue to like the way that he's, finding himself in the NBA and gaining more confidence. They put a stat up during the game of how all his numbers have grown and steadily increased month by month since he's been a pro. From October to now, he's shooting very, very well in the month of October. He's also facilitating. He had 6 more assists tonight, only 1 turnover. So I think that Davion is continuing to just build on, putting himself in a good position here to be a good player for a long time. And I think that there probably will come a day where, he cracks a starting lineup at some point, whether it's with Sacramento or not. I believe that. So it's definitely a good thing for the Kings to have. But a lot of the comments in here are true in that the Kings don't have a real true second option, a really formidable player that you can put alongside De'Aaron Fox. They have a lot of nice players who are capable. We've seen a lot of these guys of scoring 20 points here, 20 points there. And some of these guys will do that more consistently, like Davion Mitchell. I don't know if he won't average 20 a game this season, but it's something that he is capable of doing, I think, at some point in his career. But yes, the Kings are sort of a mixed bag of talent right now that doesn't fully complement each other, and they need another big centerpiece.
Yep. Let's talk a little bit about the starting lineup real quick, and then I want to move on. We saw Metu and Len tonight. How do you feel about this group? You think it's time to switch it up a little bit more? I know I just talked about consistency in that, but
well, that's the thing is they've switched it up all season long.
Yeah.
And some of that has been because they had to, because they've had starters out. But the power forward spot has been a revolving door all year long. They haven't been able to have one guy consistently play in that spot, even though Marvin Bagley has been consistent, even though it's not, like all-star type numbers, but he has played at a very consistent level over the past 3 weeks or so.
Other than the start he got against Cleveland.
But all those starters were benched for a good portion of the second half anyway. I don't think that Marvin was going to have a great game overall anyway, even if he had been left in. But part of that is just because they were limited in the number of minutes they got in the second half. So it's not going to fix anything for them to switch the starting lineup again, even though I expect them to do it. It won't change anything, in my opinion.
Yeah. Another good game by Marvin Bagley tonight. 12 points, 11 rebounds, 1 block. I really want to see Marvin at the center. I really do. While Holmes is out with this eye injury, and hopefully he's ready to return when the Kings face the Wizards at home, because he is a big missing piece on this Kings team. But I'd love to see Marvin at the 5. I just want to see what he can do, what he can bring offensively and defensively. I think you got to give this guy a shot. He's young. You're losing games. You're shuffling guys in and out of the lineup. Let's give Marvin a shot at the 5 and see what happens.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it can't be much worse. I'll give you that.
Yeah. All right. So let's see here. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to dive deeper into your Kings with a section called Around the Crown. Welcome back. This is Around the Crown. We're talking all things Sacramento Kings and beyond. Join the Royal family by hitting that subscribe button, and while you're down there, smash up that like button as well. We got a bunch of things to talk about. We're moving on from the game. We don't want to talk about this Raptors game anymore, so we're moving on. I want to talk about some trades, some other exciting news, and I want to hear from you guys. So let us know in the chat, guys, you want to trade for potential trades, and maybe Calvin and I will give our insights on that. But first off, I just wanted to mention there are a ton of COVID outbreaks currently going on around the league. We just saw Chicago have 10 players put on the COVID list. Their next game against the Raptors has been postponed. Kings haven't really been affected by COVID that much yet.
They've been lucky, yeah.
And they haven't had that many injuries. And they're still losing a ton of games. So it just makes me wonder, once the bug starts to come around to Sacramento, it's going to make us even thinner and less likely to win these games. So I just want to hear some thoughts from you, Calvin, on what's going on with all these COVID outbreaks. Is there something the league can do or should do to try and cool these down, or what do you think?
I don't think there's anything that they can do about it. It's unfortunately just the state of the world that we live in now. And to be honest, I think the NBA has been lucky that it hasn't been worse than it has. Really all professional sports leagues in this country have been pretty lucky to go through one disastrous year and then be able to come back. Fans are allowed. I don't ever see anybody wearing a mask in the stands at any of these games. Even if they have it on, it's usually the chin diaper route. And so, no, I don't think there's much that they can do. I've already said that 97% of the league is vaccinated. So it's an extremely small percentage of players that aren't vaccinated. Some of them haven't even played a game this year, like Kyrie Irving. So no, I don't think that there's anything really that can be done about this. It's just it's a storm that they're going to have to weather. And each individual team is going to have to weather. Yeah. Chicago is hit by far the worst so far out of anybody that I've seen, 10 players in COVID protocol. That's just a lot of people to be out. And it's not just anybody. I mean, we're talking Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan are both out right now.
Yep. And, we see it hitting the NFL as well. My fantasy team has been decimated by COVID over the last week or so, but we're still winning games, so happy about that. I read an article this week talking about how Terrence Davis stole Buddy Hield's minutes on this team. We saw him have 28 points the other night. He's been playing a lot better. Only 17 minutes tonight for him, 5 points. Buddy Hield outplayed him offensively. He got more minutes. He outscored him. Do you think there's any validity to this article?
Yeah, I think there's some. I mean, Terrence Davis was inserted into the starting lineup. I don't know how many. Has Buddy even started a game this year?
No.
I don't think he has. So, yeah, I think there's a little bit of truth to that. But I also think that the Kings have been playing all year long, really. Even when Luke Walton was still the head coach, he wasn't playing as many people as many minutes on every single night as Gentry has, or as Gentry has had to do in some cases with these injuries that they've had to endure. So yeah, there's a little bit of truth to that, but I also think that it's not surprising to me. Alvin Gentry has said over and over and over again that he's going to ride the hot hand, whoever is engaged and focused, in that particular game is going to get the lion's share of the minutes. And Terrence Davis did earn himself some more minutes by playing really, really well. And at the same time, Buddy Hield was in one of the worst shooting slumps of his career. So I'm not sure that you could really argue that Buddy should have been playing more minutes compared to anybody on this team, not just Terrence Davis.
Yeah. And he's, as we mentioned, he is the definition of a streaky shooter. Some days we see the good, some days we see the bad, some days we see the buddy. All right, moving on here. I want to say I did catch a Stockton Kings game this week, and I saw Emmanuel Terry balling out for the Stockton Kings. He's averaging 10 points, 10 rebounds this season. Just makes me wonder, Cal, should the Kings call up a guy like Emmanuel Terry? They don't have a lot of forwards. This guy might be able to help them. What are your thoughts?
My thoughts are, first of all, I'm a big fan of Emmanuel Terry. I watched a lot of him in the Summer League this year. He is the type of player that you have to like, and he fills a lot of needs for the Kings. You mentioned he's a forward. He would add to that wing depth. He plays good defense. He's incredibly athletic. He plays with a ton of energy. which is something that we continue to talk about with the Kings right now, being this lazy team that can't get themselves out of this slump. So do I think that he deserves a shot? Yes, I absolutely do. However, I'm not so sure that this solves many problems for the Kings long term, because it just adds another body into this already really, really deep bench. And I think you're just going to continue to see all these different lineups play out. So I think Emmanuel Terry stands to gain a lot from that move, but I'm not sure the Kings stand to gain a lot from that move, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. Just happy to see somebody playing good in a Kings jersey, even if it is in Stockton.
Yeah.
Speaking of G League teams, Isaiah Thomas has reportedly signed a contract to play in the NBA G League Showcase December 19th through the 22nd. The G League Winter Showcase features 8 teams in a single elimination tournament. Team scouts and executives will be in attendance to evaluate players. He's also received a contract offer from the Grand Rapids Gold, which is the G League affiliate of the Denver Nuggets. I know many of you guys were Isaiah Thomas fans when he was here in Sacramento and even beyond, watching him play really well in Boston, and then unfortunately having hip injuries and falling off in Cleveland and LA. It's good to see Isaiah Thomas coming back. You know, the dude has started from the worst situation ever. It seems all like in every single aspect. Drafted, the very last player drafted, works his way up to become a starter, gets a big contract, gets injured, and now he's just working his way back up again. So really, really happy to see that. Anything
definitely rooting for Isaiah Thomas. Definitely rooting for him.
You think he'll make it to the NBA this season?
Back with the Kings? No, I don't.
Do you think he'll make it to the NBA this season?
I will. I'll say yes, because I feel like, again, going back to the way that the world is working right now, all these COVID outbreaks, injuries, I think that there will be an opportunity for him somewhere at some point.
Yep, I agree. All right, moving on. Let's talk about trades, guys. Hit us up in the chat. Let us know how you feel, what kind of trades you want to see. Vinny, can you show my screen? I got one I want to talk about with you guys that I saw today by Sports Not. What do you think about this trade, Cal? Kings get Ben Simmons. Oh, sorry, not Tyrese Maxey. That is a mistake.
Yeah, I would do that trade.
There we go. Matisse Thybulle. So I want to hear your thoughts on this trade. Ben Simmons, Matisse Thybulle for De'Aaron Fox and Marvin Bagley. Both of us had talked about how we don't want to get rid of Fox. We're not in the trade Fox camp just to trade him. We would only trade him if we felt like it would help this team improve. This adds a lot of defense to this Kings team. How are you feeling about this deal?
Well, I've already been on record many times about how I feel about Ben Simmons. And as of today, I would not do a deal that involves De'Aaron Fox for Ben Simmons until I see Ben Simmons play again, and I'm convinced that his mental attitude, his attitude towards the game, how he approaches getting better at basketball, fixing his inefficiencies have changed. I'm not giving up my best player for him at this point. Is there a deal that I would do for Ben Simmons? Yes, there is. It wouldn't involve De'Aaron Fox, though. Yeah, it just wouldn't.
There's even a lot of people saying that the Sixers would not be willing to do a trade now involving De'Aaron Fox just because the emergence of Tyrese Maxey, and they would love to fill another position instead of the point guard because it seems like Maxey has stepped up and taken that role, making Ben Simmons expendable, potentially making his asking price a little bit lower. But, you know, it could be good for the Kings. It could be bad for the Kings. Yeah. I don't think that they should trade De'Aaron Fox at this point, so I totally agree with you there. All right. You can cut that, Vinny. So I saw an article today in the Sacramento Bee by Jason Anderson saying that the Kings have explored trade offers involving Marvin Bagley and Buddy Hield. They're shopping them around the league, trying to improve this team and bring in a good player in return to help the core of De'Aaron Fox, Tyrese Haliburton, and Richaun Holmes. I think this is great news for Kings fans because many of us have been adamant about trading Buddy, trading Marvin. So it's good to see that the Kings are actually having discussions now, because just about a week ago, they were saying that we're not trading anybody. We're trying to stick with this roster. We like what we have. We think there's potential, and we want to build off that. So it's some interesting news coming out now.
Yeah, it makes total sense from the Kings' perspective. You know, you're trying to improve the team and get away with dealing these two guys, you know, that are probably the most expendable on this team in terms of trying to keep that core group of players that you think is the future and is the way to success. You're just trying to add an extra piece. The problem is I just don't know how many deals are out there for a player that improves the roster in return for Buddy Hield and Marvin Bagley. I think Bagley is probably opening some eyes from GMs around the league. They're at least maybe taking a closer look and seeing if it makes sense. But Buddy Hield's not helping his case at all right now. If I'm another GM, I haven't seen anything from him lately that makes me want to trade for him.
Yeah. You know, the only thing I could say about Buddy Hield is he's a good shooter. We know that. The numbers might not reflect it as of recently, but he takes a lot of bad shots. If I'm a good team with a good coach, I think I'm pretty confident in myself that I'm going to get this guy some good shots. And if he's playing with guys that are respectable at the three-point line, that can get their own shot, he's going to have a lot more opportunities. I think that's one reason why the Lakers are pretty interested in a guy like Buddy Hield, because you have LeBron, you have Anthony Davis, you have some of these other guys. They're going to get Buddy Hield open shots, and I think that'll be reflected in his field goal percentage.
Yeah, I just don't know, though. I mean, the Lakers bench is one of the best bench units in the league in three-point shooting already. I would worry putting him out there with these other guys and somehow throwing off the chemistry. I mean, I don't think Buddy Hield is going to start for the Lakers, which means he's probably going to be coming off the bench with Malik Monk and Carmelo Anthony, who are having great years outside. So I don't see there being much of a want or a desire if I'm the Lakers for him right now either.
I don't think he'll end up in the Lakers. I think if he goes somewhere, it'll be probably another contender, but I really don't know at this point. Like, you're right. Like, he makes a lot of money. He's not very efficient. He makes these mental errors, mental lapses late in games. And someone says here, sass, but he shoots you out of games more than he shoots you in, which as of lately is very, very true. Lowell says, trade Harrison Barnes. He's had a rough comeback to this team. Calvin, I know you've been adamant about keeping Harrison Barnes. We got to see Harrison match up with Scotty Barnes tonight. Scotty showed us who the real Barnes, or the better Barnes, is as of right now. How are you feeling about HB? Would you consider a trade at this point, and what are you looking to get back for him?
Well, he's struggling right now, and it really is affecting the Kings. They desperately need another reliable scorer, you know, like he was early on in the season when he was putting up 20 points a game. Even though the Kings were not, winning games at a super high rate, they were, constantly in the mix, right around 500. They didn't go on any of these huge losing streaks really, really early on in the year. And that was because, largely in part, they had, even though when De'Aaron Fox was struggling, they had another guy that they could rely on to go out there and get them 17 to 22 points every night.
Yep.
So they desperately need him to get back to that mode. And I don't really know what's the issue with him overall. Would I consider trading him? Yes, I would. But what I'm going to be looking for in return, if I'm going to trade Harrison Barnes, he is really the only wing on this team. So I'm going to have to get a starting wing in return for him. Somebody that is, at or above Harrison Barnes' level. And when I say that, I mean at the level of what we saw early on from him this year, where he's scoring 20 points a game.
Yep. I agree. We'll talk a little bit more about Harrison here in a second, but I want to address somebody here in the chat. Gothen. Is it Gothen? Gothen. I'm sorry, man. I always mess up your name. I'm horrible with names. I'm really bad with names. But anyways, he says, how about the Suns for a buddy destination? I'm looking here at the trade machine. Vinny, you can show my screen if you like. What are you really going to get from the Suns? You look salary-wise, they don't really have much to offer. They're not giving you Ayton. They're probably not giving you Miles Bridges or Cameron Payne. So you're going to get, what, Jay Crowder and Dario Saric? Maybe a draft pick for Buddy Hield. Is that really worth it? I don't know.
Well, I would take Jay Crowder. I would.
Yeah.
Because it adds wing depth. It adds a reliable outside shooter, a good defender, and a veteran guy who everywhere he goes, he seems to be on winning teams as of late in his career.
I was a big fan of his when he was with Dallas. I loved him in Boston. But when I watched him go to Cleveland, man, he lost his shot. He was not playing defense in Cleveland at all. And this is with a team that goes to the finals with LeBron James. So, I'm not a big Jay Crowder fan anymore. I used to be. But let us know how you feel about this deal, if you'd be willing to make this trade. Other than that, I don't really see many other guys here that they're going to give up. And that's what it comes to, is Buddy Hield's got this huge salary here, $22 million. So, using a combination of some of these guys to get up to that 20 million range, I don't know how possible that really is. All right, Vinny, you could cut that for me. LOL says Suns decline. Crowder has been great for them. Yeah. I mean, Crowder's great with some teams. Some teams he's not. But, he played great with the Jazz. Thought he played really good. But the problem with this Kings team is, I think we've mentioned on a prior podcast, maybe it was Skip, is that when good players go to the Kings, they seem to play below what they're capable of playing. So a good role player on another team, I have no idea what to expect from that player on the Kings. I really don't.
I mean, yeah, I don't.
It's a bad attitude to have, I know, but it's tough.
I feel like you have to at least try to make your team better. Whether or not the guy actually lives up to the bill is another story. But I personally see Jay Crowder as an upgrade from Buddy Hield. I have no idea what the Suns would want in return for a guy like that. But if that deal was a possibility, like I said before, there aren't many wings right now that I wouldn't consider trading Buddy Hield for.
Yep.
At least guys that play regular minutes and are good shooters and can play some defense, which Jay Crowder is one of those guys.
Another guy that's being mentioned as a potential trade target for the Kings and a couple other teams around the league. He's a young guy. I'm surprised he's already available, but Cam Reddish with the Atlanta Hawks. He's a small forward, brings defense, can shoot the three ball. You like Cam? You think he'd be a good fit on the team?
I like Cam. I think there's a lot of potential with him. Cam has had some injury problems, and he hasn't really kind of lived up to a lot of the hype that surrounded him, in part because he really hasn't had as many opportunities, in his short career. So it's a high risk, high reward deal, I think. But I would welcome Cam Reddish to the team. Again, wing depth, guy who can go out and score, has the ability, the potential to be a good defender. He hasn't shown that to me yet. But again, he hasn't had a ton of opportunities. So,
Yeah, I think any young guy that you can add to this team with potential is good. It's just a matter of what you're giving up to get that guy. Obviously, the Kings have a lot of guys making a decent amount of money. Some guys that are a little bit older, as in Harrison Barnes, Buddy Hield. Flipping those guys for maybe a salary filler and a young, talented guy like a Cam Reddish would be a win-win, I think, for both teams.
Yeah.
And if you were to send Buddy Hield to Atlanta, that'd be pretty exciting to watch him and Trae Young launch it from beyond the arc.
They got a lot of guys that launch it.
Yeah.
Not just
Kevin
Trae
Huerter,
Young.
yeah.
Kevin Huerter. DeAndre Hunter has proved to be a good shooter when he's been healthy. He's not out there right now.
Gallinari.
They got Gallinari.
Bogdanovich.
Even John Collins is throwing up threes now. So
Bogdanovich.
they definitely are a run and gun team.
DeLon Wright was killing it for the Kings.
Yeah.
Late last year, making a bunch of threes. So, yeah, that's a really interesting squad, and I root for them just because Bogey's on that team, and I want Bogey to do well. We have a couple people here talking about rebuilding the Kings. An OKC type of rebuild would be nice. Presti is smart with the amount of draft capital he acquired. Yeah, I mean, the Kings don't have a Russell Westbrook to trade. They don't have a Paul George to trade to get all this draft capital.
Yeah.
I do love what he's done so far, but, it really hasn't. When is the rebuild over? When is enough?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It still remains to be seen what they do with all of those draft picks.
Yep.
I mean, they're
draft picks don't win games.
They're right in another position to get a top draft pick again this year. So.
Yep. And how many is enough? You saw it with the Sixers. They eventually got good, but how many guys did they have to tank to try and go after?
Right.
They end up trading draft picks for a number 1 overall pick who was on their team for less than 2 years, and they end up flipping for basically a late first-round pick to the Magic, and Markelle Fultz has continued to be injured since then. So it's really tough. Then they have another former number 1 overall pick who's not even playing for them right now because he's sitting on the bench because they threw him under the bus. He doesn't even want to report. So it's really tough to say. Calvin and I, we did a 2K rebuild. We're going to do another one very soon here. We're going to have a little bit more of a plan this time. But I think we're leaning towards blowing up the roster, trading everyone not named Fox, Haliburton, Mitchell, and potentially Rashawn Holmes. So let us know how you feel about that. We'd love to have you guys join in. We'll be doing some polls and some other fun stuff to hear your thoughts and try and make this team a little bit better. Who knows? As the Kings start to slide a little bit more, we might do a few more of those just for fun so we can watch at least a digital Kings game winning.
Yeah.
Winning. Yeah. I read another article this week by Bleacher Report titled NBA Teams That Need a Trade to Save Their Seasons. One of the teams they listed was the Sacramento Kings. Their logic was the Kings clearly believe they are they are above or better than a play-in team. And their reasoning on that was there's no reason the Kings would have fired Luke Walton, fewer than 20 games into the season if they didn't have high expectations for the year. So I think we all agree here the Kings do need to make a move. It's just a matter of whether they can get a big enough name or player or multiple players to save their season, or if it's, downward spiral and draft picks from here.
Yeah, I think it's very obvious that the Kings believe that they are better than what they have done currently. Everything that they've done shows it. Monty McNair himself has said it. He said he believed that firing Luke Walton and putting Alvin Gentry in charge would get the confidence back of this group to playing the way that they were early on in the season. They continue to double down on the draft picks that this front office has made in the past 2 years. They continue to double down on, bringing back Rashawn Holmes. So all of that stuff tells me that the Kings believe they are better than what they have done so far. And I think that I believe that too. I don't know how much better I think they are than what they've done so far, but I do believe that they are better simply because they just don't play a full 48 minutes basically any night. If they did that, they probably have, I'm going to say 3, maybe 4 more wins than they do right now.
Yeah.
Which is right around 500, maybe a game over or something like that. So it makes a lot of sense to say that the Kings are a team that need to make a trade to save their season, because you either are just going to be hovering right around this play-in tournament unless the roof caves in and then you are suddenly down, and at the bottom of the conference, or you make a move and you not just have a run at the play-in tournament, but you have a run at the playoffs itself. And I think that we've talked about it a lot already, but these Indiana Pacers players that are available would make an enormous difference for the Kings right now. So if I'm the Kings front office, and I think they are, I mean, reports today said that they've been very interested in Sabonis for years, which is kind of a weird thing to say. It's like,
he's a good player. Who's not interested?
Exactly. The guy's made 2 All-Star teams. That's not news, in my opinion. Everybody's interested in him if he's available.
It's just saying Kings are interested in LeBron James.
Yeah. So it's reporting, but it is also true that these guys are available, and I think the Kings need to make as hard of a push as possible to retain one of them. I would much rather have Miles Turner, like I've said repeatedly on this show, but I would more than welcome Domantas Sabonis if the Kings were able to pull off a deal for him, because that I do believe improves the team.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy how fragile this team is in this Western Conference is. If De'Aaron Fox had made those 2 free throws, Kings would have 12 wins right now, and they'd be in the 10 spot, which is technically a play-in spot. I know it's, your 6 games. They would be 5 games under 500 right now. Doesn't sound like a win or a team or a position that you really want to be in. But they're so close. If you're management, you're thinking, wow, we win that game. That's a 4-game winning streak. Maybe we play a little bit better in Cleveland. Maybe we play a little bit better tonight in Toronto. We're right in the mix. But then you look on the other side of the coin. If it weren't for that 3-game winning streak, if they had lost those 3 games, they'd be tied with the Pelicans with the worst record in the West. So it's really so tough. And hopefully a big trade will happen soon. Hopefully that can help propel them towards having a better record this year, or at least set them up to have a great offseason, come back next year stronger with a new coach, and make some moves then. I don't really know. I'm at a loss for words at this point, because something needs to change. It's broken right now. Something needs to change.
More than one thing. They have a really shaky organizational structure. They've had that for a long time. And we talked about it before. The greatest teams, the greatest franchises in this league are strong from the top down. It starts with ownership and it trickles down from there. And the Kings are missing a lot of those pieces.
Yeah. Yeah, Jeff says they don't want to set the record for consecutive playoff drought. I mean, what does that record mean? It doesn't really mean anything. As a franchise, if you're worried about that, you're looking at the wrong thing. Yes, nobody wants to lose. People want to make the playoffs. But if that's your thinking on how you're going to rebuild this team for the future, you're looking at it the entire wrong way, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with that. Definitely.
Sass says Pacers have a better record and they are blowing it up. Are they blowing it up, or are they retooling?
Well, the report is that they're moving towards a rebuild. So, I mean, yeah, that does kind of make it seem like they're blowing it up. It's just a really unique thing. The Pacers have only missed the playoffs 8 times in the last 30 years, but they've been stuck in this sort of NBA purgatory type situation where they're never terrible, but they're never great.
Mm-hmm.
So they suddenly have this epiphany that, we're going to try a different method this time.
Yep.
And they are getting rid of a lot of their best players, but they also are trying to keep a core of these guys to build around. I mean, they're open to trading Sabonis or Turner, not necessarily both of them. They want one of those guys to be the focal piece to go along with somebody like Duarte moving forward, who they really like and has had a great season, great rookie year.
Yeah, and I think that's something that, the Kings can learn from. You look at some of these good franchises, there comes a point where you have to decide who's your guy. You look at the Warriors. They were in this situation with Monte Ellis and Steph Curry. You're like, okay, obviously these guys don't fit or they can't reach their potential together. We're at a fork in the road. Which way are we going? And I think the Pacers are at that point where they're like, do we go with Miles Turner? Do we go with Sabonis? Which one do we build around? We've tried them together for a few years. It's not quite working out. So, yeah, I don't anticipate them trading both of them. And, it might depend on what they can get for one guy versus the other, as into who they keep and build around, because I think they do honestly like both of those guys.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't blame them. I like both of those guys, too.
Yeah.
Lowell says, are you guys pro fire the current front office?
No, I'm not, because this trade deadline to me is going to be the make or break moment for this front office. There's still an opportunity for them to do something here. Monty has drafted best available. He's put together this roster that has a lot of good individual pieces, and now he has an opportunity to make something out of those pieces that results in a better overall team. I think it's a little early or premature to fire the whole front office right now, when this important date of where 65% of the league becomes tradable hasn't even happened yet.
Yep. And that's December 15th that he's referring to, which is coming up in just a couple days.
It is coming up very shortly. Like I said, this next month and a half, 2 months leading into the trade deadline is an extremely important time for this front office. Extremely, extremely important. But they still have a chance. So I'm going to let that, see what they do with it before I say, out with the old and in with the new. I think that would actually set the organization back even further if they were to do something like that.
Yeah, what up, Lane? Good to see you, buddy. What's up, Michael? Glad to see you guys in the chat here. Foster says, what would you like to see happen, I'm guessing, before the trade deadline?
I would like to see a trade made.
Well, let's fire up Calvin in the front office position.
Well, look,
your GM.
We've talked about this ad nauseum for the past couple of weeks. I want Miles Turner. That is out of anybody in the league that I know is available today. That's the one person that I want the most, who I think is both available and obtainable for the Kings. Certainly, there are plenty of other guys. Siakam, I would love to have. You could go down the list and say, yeah, there's this player I would love, this player I would love. But my thing is, it's clear that this is not working, or it's not working the way they intended it to. We talked all last season about how terrible the Kings were defensively, and if they could just improve a little bit more in that area, but still keep the same offensive numbers, they're probably a playoff team. This year, they have not done that. They're slightly better than they were last year, but it's almost impossible not to be better than the worst statistical defense in NBA history. So at this point, I just want to see there be some type of move here that acknowledges the fact that we suck in these certain areas. We need more depth in these certain areas, so we're going to go out and get that. If the moves that they make end up not working out, that's really unfortunate, but I will at least be happy seeing that there is attention to detail and the deficiencies on this team currently.
Yeah, I think Calvin and I are both on the same page here, where we just want defense. We think they need more defense. Drafting Davion Mitchell is a step in the right direction, but it's not enough. You need to bring in more guys. There are a bunch of players that I would go after. If I was in the GM's position right now, I've talked about Miles Turner. I love Miles Turner. I'd love to bring him to the squad. I love Matisse Thybulle. I'd love to bring Matisse Thybulle to the Kings. I like Lou Dort a lot as well. I think it's worth it calling Phoenix and seeing what it would take to get a guy like DeAndre Ayton, because potentially you could buy low on that guy. He has a lot of potential. It's hard to say what you would do as the GM because we're not a GM. We're not in that position. We don't know what the calls, we don't know what the offers are that are on the table. All we know is that you need to take what you have and hopefully turn those pieces into something better and make a trade to improve your roster. So, there's a bunch of guys we could talk about we'd love to have on the team, but it all depends on what it's going to cost to get one of those guys. And I think that's the only way you can really look at it is, would I love to have Lou Dort on the team? Yes. Am I giving up, 4 first-round draft picks and De'Aaron Fox for Lou Dort? Hell no, I'm not. But if I can get a reasonable deal for him, I would love to bring him in on this squad because I like what he does, and I think he can really help this team. Marcus Smart is another guy like that. The Kings need defensive-oriented players that have a dog mentality, that can light a fire underneath these players and just play some defense and care about winning games.
Yeah, and they need a more balanced roster from top to bottom too. They've doubled down super hard on this guard-heavy lineup, and they're very deficient at a lot of the wing and forward positions. So they need to go out. They need to get in a perfect world. They would go out and get a starting power forward.
Yep,
a guy that we know is going to be the starting power forward every game for the rest of the season. There's no question of, well, who do you think it's going to be tonight? They're playing this team. This team's big, or this team plays fast, or blah, blah, blah. No, this is the guy that starts at power forward every single night for us. And then they need wing depth on top of that.
Yeah, and I honestly don't know if this small ball lineup is something that's going to work for the Kings. I think that they need to do whatever they can to help improve this team through the rest of the year. But firing your coach early on in the season, statistically, if you look at history, is not do well for your team. We all know what happened with Atlanta last year, and they end up going on, a couple winning streaks, playing very well. That is an abnormality. That is not a regular thing when you fire your coach early on in the season. So they need to do what they can to improve throughout the rest of the year. And then they need to think long and hard at the end of this season, what plan are we going after? And we need to stick to it. We need to hire a coach that's going to play the playing style we want. We need to bring in players that match that playing style. And we need to be consistent. And we need to do that over and over and over again. It doesn't matter if you win 5 games in a row. It doesn't matter if you lose 5 games in a row. If you have a system that you've chosen and you need to stick with it and keep going, you have good players, you like what you're doing, you have to stick with it.
100%. Shout out to Skip. I just see him in the comments there. Sacktown Breakdown in the house. What's up, buddy?
A lot of people are talking about Fox's post-game press conference about how he didn't really care until they attacked him and the things he's been writing on Twitter and all that stuff. Fox is a competitor. You may not think that he's got that fire or he brings it every single night, but over these last couple losses, he's been one of the only guys that has brung it offensively on this team. So it's got to be frustrating. This is his fifth year in the league. Every year it's like, okay, we got to make it to the playoffs. We got to do this. When you draft 2 more point guards in back-to-back drafts, doesn't matter how you feel about best available and all that. But for De'Aaron Fox, that must not feel that great.
No, nobody likes to lose.
You look when they had Boogie Cousins and Vlade drafts Georges Papagiannis. DeMarcus Cousins is pissed because he needs help. Why are you drafting a guy that's going to sit on the bench behind me and come in and help after me? I need guys on the court that are going to help me now. De'Aaron Fox needs a Robin. If he is going to be a Batman, he needs a Robin, and that guy's got to be consistent and be there on the court. I love Dame Lillard. I love everything I've seen from him, but CJ McCollum helped Dame a lot. You look at John Wall in Washington, Bradley Beal helped him. You saw it in Toronto with Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan. players build off of each other. De'Aaron Fox doesn't really have a guy. I would love it to be Tyrese Haliburton, but he needs a guy to build off of.
Well, the way the NBA is now, you actually need more than one guy. I mean, it used to be a Batman and Robin league, but it's now become a three-headed monster league. You know, thanks to LeBron and Wade and Chris Bosh, that forever changed the NBA. That you look around, all the best teams in the league have three guys. I mean, the Warriors right now are kind of the only team that really doesn't fit that mold, I guess, to me. Maybe even Utah. But you look around the league, and all the better teams in this league have three people that might not all be stars or all-stars, but they're very high-level players that you can count on night in and night out.
Yep.
And the Kings are a long ways away from that.
Lane says, would you be shocked if no trades happen before the deadline?
Would I be shocked? No. I wouldn't.
I would be. I would be really shocked. They got to do something.
They got to do something, but I think it was Skip in there made a good point in that teams, the worse and worse that the Kings play, teams might start to shy away from them a little bit for trades, at least meaningful trades. You know, I'm sure there's something out there that they could do to just swap players, you know, on rosters. But in terms of making a move like for a guy as in Miles Turner or Domantas Sabonis, a really impactful player that you know is going to improve the team immediately, the Kings might be playing themselves out of that a little bit.
Yeah. You know, the only thing I can say as far as the Kings losing, it makes that draft pick a little bit more attractive to other teams. I look at the Thunder, SGA is playing great, but
he's got nobody else.
He might not even be in their future plans on that team. Would you be willing to give up for him?
That's the problem with them is they've put themselves in this position of all it is assets. They don't have, to me, they don't really have like a direction moving forward. They're just a mixed bag of people. I mean, even SGA, the only reason they have him is because they had Paul George.
Yep. Do you think the Kings should go after him?
I would love to have him.
I'd love to see him and Fox together.
I would love to have him. But I'm not, I don't know. I mean, maybe you could convince the Thunder to do a deal that doesn't involve De'Aaron Fox.
Yeah.
But I find it kind of hard to believe. I mean, what if you're the Kings, what are you going to give the Thunder? They already have 1 billion draft picks. So unless they're even crazier and decide, okay, let's just keep on taking these draft picks, that doesn't really do much for me if I'm them. They don't have much roster-wise in general talent overall, but they have a ton of young players at a lot of different positions. I mean, is Davion Mitchell, you know, SGA makes a shit ton of money also. So they have to put guys like Buddy Hield and Marvin Bagley and maybe even another guy in there in order to make that deal work.
Let's fire up the trade machine and take a look at this.
I just don't know, man. Gilgeous-Alexander is such a fine player. If the Thunder move on from him as well and they don't get a star in return, I mean, they're basically condemning that organization to another 5 years of awful basketball.
Yep. Yeah, and SGA,
unless they hit big time on a draft pick, which is always possible, but it's nowhere near guaranteed. It's the lowest probability in terms of all the ways you can improve your team: free agency, trades, and the draft. The draft is the least predictable by far out of all of them.
Yep. Yeah, SGA just signed a contract extension, so I don't think he can be traded until January 14th or maybe even right up before the trade deadline. But he's still only making $5.5 million this season because his extension doesn't kick in until next year, which, you know, you could look as a good thing, but probably not the greatest considering the Kings would want to give up a guy like Buddy Hield, Harrison Barnes, Marvin Bagley. All these guys make more money this year than SGA does. Someone's talking about Tyrese Haliburton and Marvin Bagley. I think it's Skip here for SGA. I think you got to throw a draft pick or two in there as well.
And if you look at the Thunder's track record, they when they make these deals, they make big-time deals. They get big piece valuable trade pieces in return. What to either compile more draft picks or make another move in the long run. I haven't seen them do, a mediocre deal that involves one of their better players ever since they've been a franchise, really.
Yep.
Since they moved over from Seattle. So,
yeah. And we all saw them get fleeced on the James Harden deal, so that might make them think twice about trading one of these young guys away. Because Paul George, you knew what you were going to get from Paul George. I think that's why they traded him. They had Carmelo Anthony. They got rid of him. They have had guys. I can't think of a luckier fan base to have all these guys. I know they didn't win a title, but if you tell me I could have Russell Westbrook, James Harden, Kevin Durant, Serge Ibaka, Paul George, Carmelo Anthony, like the list goes on and on. They've had a ton of good players on this small market franchise in a relatively short amount of time. And now they're loaded with draft picks. I think they have one of the brightest futures in the NBA, which is surprising to say about a team that doesn't really have a lot of guys to build around. All right, a couple shout outs here. Hair and Beard Podcast, good to see you. We got Kristen in here. Dylan is here. You guys are upset. We are upset too. Welcome back to Kings Group Therapy. We broke down the game earlier. If you want to rewind, it's not very fun. It's a quick section. There wasn't a ton to talk about.
Probably skip over that
other than how bad they played tonight. We're talking about trades right now. We're looking at the Thunder's roster here. I know I had mentioned Lou Dort over and over again, how I love him, but he's making less than $2 million this season, unless you're taking on a lot of salary. But this Thunder team doesn't really have much salary to give up.
No,
you look at Derek Favors, almost $10 million a season. Josh Giddey's second highest paid player at $6 million.
As a rookie.
Yeah, so I don't know how many of these guys the Thunder would have to package together to trade for a guy like Buddy Hield or Harrison Barnes, and I honestly don't know why they would even be interested in those guys. But Kings have all their draft picks, which is positive, and they need to make a move. They definitely need to make a move. Any other guys, Kyle, that you're thinking? Vinny, you can cut my screen.
That I'm thinking of trying to trade for?
Yeah. Just any names that pop out to you that you're like, I would love to see this guy in a Kings jersey. We talked about Siakam.
Well, yeah,
I don't really want to talk about the Raptors anymore.
I could look at any NBA roster in the league and pick a couple of guys that I would probably like to have with the Kings. I just don't know, if it's realistic to think that they're A, available, and B, that the Kings have enough or have what it takes to go and get them. The Kings they're really handicapped right now. Like I see in here Jaylen Brown. Of course, you'd be absolutely crazy to not want Jaylen Brown on your team.
Yeah.
But if you're the Celtics, who are you going to take for Jaylen Brown from the Kings?
Michael says Fox in a 2022 first-round pick.
Well, okay. I mean, I probably would do that deal at this point, just because Jaylen Brown is a tremendous talent, wing depth, all of that stuff. Do I personally believe that the Celtics are doing that deal? No, I don't.
Yep. Yeah, shout out Gothin. You guys got to hit that like button. If you're Kings fans, smash up that like button. Calvin and I are here. We're bummed. We're watching the game. We're pissed off. We're still here. We're giving you a shoulder to cry on. We're giving you somebody to talk to. We love talking Kings hoops. So make sure you guys hit that like button down below and hit that subscribe button to join the Royal family, because we're going to do this after every game this season. It doesn't matter if they lose, if they win. We're going to be here. We're going to be drinking beers, and we're going to be having fun with you guys. Michael says, add a second first.
It would take more than 2 first-round picks.
And De'Aaron Fox?
Yes. Look, Danny Ainge is not doing a deal for De'Aaron Fox.
He's not in charge anymore.
Okay. That's fine.
It's Brad Stevens, first-time GM.
Even better. Brad Brad Stevens, super more analytical than Danny Ainge. You just cannot convince me that is a realistic trade. De'Aaron Fox and a first-round pick for Jaylen Brown.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. That just does. There's no way. Absolutely no way.
Yeah, Cam says Matisse Thybulle. I'd love to have Matisse Thybulle on this team. It's just, what are you going to give up? I'd love to get Matisse. I'd love to bring back Seth Curry. But what are you going to give up to bring these guys? The problem with going after rookies or guys on their rookie scale contract is they don't make enough money. So you really can't send them a lot in return unless you're sending them another guy on a rookie scale contract and draft picks.
No, it's not. Sorry to interrupt you. It's not because Fox is that bad. It's because Jaylen Brown is that much better. Jaylen Brown is a complete all-around player. He's an all-star. I mean, trading Jaylen Brown for De'Aaron Fox makes the Celtics worse. It does.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
sorry, end rant on that one.
And
you're just not going to see that trade happen. I'm sorry.
And we're big De'Aaron Fox fans over here. It's just, looking at yourself in the mirror and being honest. I like De'Aaron. I've liked him since college. I wanted the Kings to draft him. I still like him, but he needs help. And do the Kings have another bunch of assets that they can throw at a team and bring in a second and a third piece to add to De'Aaron Fox? Or do they have to trade De'Aaron Fox to potentially have assets to have these guys in the future? Because we all talk about how the Kings have been on this kind of middle road here. They haven't had a chance to get a lot of high draft picks. When they did have the second overall pick, drafted Marvin Bagley, wasn't starting or playing much half of this season so far. So that is obviously not working out. I would be very, very surprised if Marvin ended up on this team next year.
Oh, yeah, I
but
would too.
They're drafting a little better now. I don't really like the fit of all these guys they're drafting, but I'm going to stick with my prediction that I've had since day one. As soon as Monty took over this squad, he's going to draft best available. He's going to acquire assets. And he's going to end up trading them for a big-name guy. I don't know who that is yet, but I have to think that that's his goal. You look at his track record, that's what he did in Houston a couple different times.
Yeah.
I know he wasn't the main guy there. It was Daryl Morey, but number 2 in command, you think he was very involved in all those conversations. Had to be, he had to be. So I think that that's potentially what is going to happen.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's not De'Aaron Fox. Hopefully he can bring in a big name guy without De'Aaron Fox involved and pair them together. But who knows? At this point, we talk about the definition of insanity.
Mm-hmm.
Kings are insane right now. They're doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. They need to do something different.
Definitely. And I'm reading, that we're still seeming to be talking about the Celtics and the Kings being trade partners here in the chat. And you guys are making really good points. The Celtics definitely need a point guard. There has been rumors swirling, although I'm not sure whether I believe them or not, about Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum not being able to coexist. They might not like playing with each other that much. I do think the Celtics are clearly at a crossroads. I mean, they're an underachieving team as well, and they probably need to do something. But if I'm the Celtics, if I'm going to give up somebody like Jaylen Brown, I'm aiming higher than De'Aaron Fox, honestly. I mean, Damian Lillard would be a guy that I would be targeting for sure if I wanted to bring in an immediate all-star point guard to go along with Jason Tatum. I think that Jaylen Brown is probably one of the highest regarded young players in the entire league. So he's going to command, in my opinion, just an incredible amount.
Yeah, and I'm not doubting the validity of them breaking up that duo because they very well could. But if I'm them, there's guys that are available that are better than De'Aaron Fox. I like Bradley Beal a lot. We've talked about him in Washington, potentially leaving Washington forever. Feels like we've been talking about that for like 10 years already. He's still there. They're playing better now. but dude is a stud. If I'm looking to break up that squad, I would much rather have a guy like Bradley Beal than De'Aaron Fox, and that's just straight up.
Yeah.
All right, Sacktown breakdown. I don't think Monty has done a good job here, but I don't think he is a bad GM either. I think we are just such a joke of a franchise. No one is looking to do business with us. Just take what we got.
Yeah, I agree with that. I do think that Monty is starting to put a little bit more pressure on himself right now, though, because we've talked about it. These last 2 drafts, he goes with 2 point guards. So, yes, those guys may have been best available players, and they might turn out to be phenomenal players in this league. But I think that he is now, with how the team is performing, he is putting the pressure on himself because it's clear that this team is not built the right way together. They're not built for success. So it's now on him to figure out what to do with that. And he has to figure out how to move some of these pieces around that either improves the team right away or gives them an opportunity in the next couple of years to improve through the draft by collecting draft picks, or, releasing a bunch of salary cap for them to try to target somebody in free agency. Although we know, as history shows us, that Sacramento really, really struggles when it comes to trying to land free agents.
Yep.
They're handicapped because they're a small market team. They don't always have the most salary cap in general, and it's hard to attract people to come play in Sacramento. So, again, that just means that there's now even more pressure on him to try to put together a deal that's going to improve this roster.
Yeah, let's talk about a guy that we haven't even really mentioned tonight, and that's because he missed the past couple games due to an eye injury, and that's Richaun Holmes. I think he's had a huge impact on the team. I don't have the stats in front of me, but I know when he misses the game, the Kings are a lot more likely to lose. How are you feeling about Richaun? Are you happy with him at the center position? Because he seems to get poked in the eye very, very often.
He's been unlucky this season.
And when he misses games, the Kings lose. So are you going to try and trade him to upgrade at that position? Do you want a lateral move to a guy that's maybe more available, or maybe a guy that fits a playing style of De'Aaron Fox a little bit better? How do you feel about the center position overall in Richaun Holmes?
I've been a fan of Richaun Holmes the past few years, that he is slowly ascended into this starting position in Sacramento. I think, to quote Skip from the other day when we had him on, we could do a lot worse than Richaun Holmes. And his skill set should fit with De'Aaron Fox very, very well.
Yep.
He's not the biggest guy, doesn't set maybe as good of screens as Miles Turner, like we talked about with Skip when he was on. So it's hard, maybe for him to free up De'Aaron Fox to the best of his ability every time. But a super athletic guy who's a great rim runner and a lob threat every time is somebody that you would think would work wonders with a guy like De'Aaron Fox.
What about on the defensive end of the floor?
I think Richaun does an admirable job on defense. I think he's put in a difficult position a lot to have to guard, these incredibly big centers all the time, night in and night out. So, yeah, I mean, if there was an opportunity for me to upgrade at that position, I would totally look towards doing that.
Yeah, when we did have Skip on the show, we talked about what we loved about Miles Turner, and that's being a rim protector, and how that makes it a lot easier on some of these other wing defenders because they know somebody has their back. I think the Kings definitely need a defensive presence inside. I don't think Richaun Holmes is that guy. Does that come from the 4 position? Do you move Richaun to the 4?
What I was going to say is part of the reason is it's not 100% Richaun Holmes' fault. It's because he doesn't have anybody in there with him. It's all solely on him every single night. He's averaged over a block per game the last 4 years. And I realize that's not, it's probably going to put him somewhere in the middle of the pack in terms of blocks per game. But he definitely has the athletic ability and the timing to be a shot blocker. We averaged 1.6 blocks per game last year. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
But part of the problem is he's undersized at his position, and he has nobody next to him. No defensive help next to him whatsoever.
And you go for the block, and they dish it to the guy behind you, and an easy layup.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I want to fast forward here a little bit to the trade deadline. It's in February. Let's say that the Kings have been able to maintain where they are. I don't really know exactly what that means, but let's say they have a 500 record or so now until the trade deadline, or maybe a little bit worse. The big moment comes. It's time to make a deal. You're not finding any of these big name guys. You miss out on Miles Turner, Sabonis. You miss out on some of these other guys. Then what do you look to do if you're the Kings?
That's going to be the tough question to answer. I think at that point, you might have to look towards the draft. Let's just try to at least get some of these guys off the books, collect some draft picks, maybe add some wing depth, even if it's not somebody that you're necessarily going to count on as a starting rotation player. But I think that some type of move that's going to benefit you possibly in the future still needs to be made, and it would appease a lot of the fan base as well, right? I mean, if another trade deadline comes around and there's nothing that gets done and this team is exactly the same as it is today, people are going to be pretty disappointed, I think.
Are you having a discussion with De'Aaron Fox and asking him if he's down for a rebuild, or if it's time to move on from him and give him a better situation and maybe give the Kings some draft picks to build around in the future? Or are you saying, I don't care what he thinks. We got him locked up long term. We're trading everybody except him, and we're going to revisit it at the end of the season?
That's a really, really tough thing to say. I'm not so sure. I mean, I feel like your franchise player, you should be having those types of conversations with him regardless. The question is how it affects him. I mean, you're kind of playing with fire a little bit in that he could come out next season or in the summer and be like, this team hasn't done anything for me and I'm over it. I want out. And at that point, you'd be like, well, fuck, we should have traded him at the deadline. So
and they're not the Sixers. They can't bench him.
Yeah.
They can't bench him the whole season and not care.
Yeah.
Yeah. They have some talent. They can't afford to leave any of it on the bench.
Yeah.
As we saw what happened with Marvin Bagley.
Yep.
All right. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to take a look at the Kings' next game and next week of basketball with Kings Crusade. Welcome back to Royal Rebounds TV, a Sacramento Kings YouTube channel for the fans, by the fans. The Kings continue their crusade to get back to the playoffs. Next up is the Washington Wizards. If you're a Kings fan, make sure you hit that like button down below and consider subscribing to the channel. If you want to join the Royal family with Calvin and I, we put out fresh Kings content almost daily. We go live after every single Kings game. And we have an awesome ESPN-style show every Friday where we break down an entire week's worth of Kings basketball in about 30 minutes. All right, Cal. So, next game, we're moving on. We're not moving on to Washington. We're moving on to Sacramento because we are going home after this horrendous road trip. Wednesday night, we play the Wizards in Sacramento. This is a much improved Wizards team. Bradley Beal is killing it. I have no idea what COVID protocols will be by on Wednesday because it seems like teams are getting eliminated or having players taken off their roster every single week as far as availability goes. How are you feeling about this game?
Man, well, how could you feel great about it? I mean, the only thing that the Kings have going for them is, A, they're coming back home, even though they haven't played very well at home this year, but at least they get to come back home and play in front of, I hope there are going to be some fans at Golden 1. And then Washington is also reeling. I believe they've won 2 out of their last 7 games. They're struggling after getting off to a really, really good start. But that being said, this is a very balanced Washington team. They have 5 players that average double figures. They have 2 more that average over 8 points a game. They play a lot of guys. They have, I think it's 12 or something like that, 11 or 12 players that average more than 12 minutes a game. So they're kind of like the Kings, except they play more defense than the Kings. So this is definitely not going to be an easy game, just like no game is an easy game for Sacramento right now.
Yep. Give a quick shout out to Tanvir. We see you there in the chat. Good to see you, buddy. Dennis says, how much more losing compared to being 11-17 though?
I'm not sure I understand the context of the question.
Sorry, Dennis. We probably missed it. You were probably mentioning that in the middle of one of us making a point on something, but 11-17 is not good. And I don't think it's going to get better anytime soon unless the Kings can make a big splash of a deal. Oh, he's talking about Sacktown Breakdown. I followed the Kings every year, but they also suck every year. Yeah, us too. Skip says a stop sign plays more defense than the Kings.
It's true.
Gets way more stops.
It's true.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. I just, I want to give a shout out to all you guys because I think that the Kings are very lucky in having the fan base they do. There's not a lot of teams that can go through this amount of these losing streaks and playoff droughts and still have dedicated fans that are willing to watch a podcast like this after every game. They still love their team. They love their players. They still rock the merchandise, and they have a good time. So I just want to give a quick shout out to all you guys out there. You guys are the real MVP.
Yes.
All right, so back to this Wizards game. Cal, let's jump into your keys to the game.
So I will go with key number 1 is going to be get easy baskets. This team has really struggled as of late to score. I mean, they only scored 101 points tonight, and that's supposed to be the thing that they do best. They have to get out in transition more. I mean, this team is really, really at its best when they're able to get a stop, get a defensive rebound, get out and run, and put guys in the right positions. Buddy Hield runs straight to the 3-point line. We talk a lot about Buddy Hield not doing a lot of things right on this team. But if there is one time where I'm really confident in him, it's when the Kings are pushing the ball. They're ahead of the defense. They have numbers, even though I don't like that term. And he gets an open 3. Fox gets easy buckets at the rim. Haliburton gets good looks when they push the ball. They need to make the game easier for themselves right now. And the Wizards are another one of those teams that plays at a relatively slow pace. So it's an opportunity for them. They can't get outscored 22-10 or whatever it was like they did tonight in fast break points. Key number 2 is going to be get HB going. I don't know what that's going to take, but the Kings desperately need somebody to help score alongside De'Aaron Fox right now. Haliburton had a good little run there for a little bit, but he has also, regressed back to his ways of not taking enough shots or whatever. Harrison Barnes needs to have a good game for the Kings to get back on track, a good offensive game. And then my last key is going to be a team effort on the glass. Montrezl Harrell and Daniel Gafford both average over 2 offensive rebounds per game. They're very active down low on the boards. It's going to take a lot of effort from everybody that plays in that game for the Kings to get finished possessions, get the rebounds so they can get out and run and get some early offense and some easy buckets.
Yeah, as of right now, ESPN has the Kings listed with a 64% chance of winning this game. I have no idea how they calculate that number at all. But I guess some positive news.
Well, it takes into effect the Wizards have lost a bunch of games in the last couple of weeks.
Yep.
it's a home game for Sacramento. So
Kyle Kuzma's,
I would have expected it to be more of a 50-50 game, but
Kuzma's listed as out. Ruri's out. Rashawn Holmes is still listed as out, although he was only supposed to miss 2 games. Hopefully he'll be ready to return in this game. But as of right now, it has him listed as out. Oh, man, what a tough game. Wizards are 15-13. They are 7-9 on the road. Kings are 5-8 at home. It's going to be a rough matchup. The thing that I'm looking forward to most about this game is it's on December 15th. Y'all know what that means.
Yeah.
Something like 65% of the league becomes eligible to be traded. So maybe we'll see a big Kings move on this date. Maybe they'll get blown out again, and it'll give Monty even more reasons to make another move or another trade. But we're going in a direction. I don't know if it's the right direction, the wrong direction, but we're going in a direction right now. I don't even really know what the goal of this Kings team is at this point, whether it's...
It feels like it's the circle of death, you know, like the iPod or the iPhone circle of death thing that just keeps spinning around and around.
Hair and Beer Podcast says, we need a real leader that will hold the squad accountable. Who? You got anybody in mind? Let us know.
I agree with that 100%. They do need that.
Cam says, we always play just well enough to not get a high-level pick, all in the name of making the playoffs. Stars run this league, and we don't attract those players in free agency. All very, very true. Very, very true. Dennis says the Xbox red ring of death. That is exactly what it is, except Xbox didn't last this long, man. It really didn't. All right, so look into the upcoming schedule. Kings are playing 3 games at home. It's actually looks like quite a few.
I would love to have Jonas Valanciunas.
Quite a few games at home because they play the Wizards at home, then they play the Grizzlies at home, then they play the Spurs at home, then they go to Golden State, which is hour and 20-minute drive maybe into the city. I still haven't been to that new arena. Then back at home against the Clippers, back at home against the Grizzlies, play the Thunder at home, the Mavs at home twice, then the Heat at home, then they go to LA to play the Lakers, still in California, then back home against the Hawks. So this is a ton of games in California, all in the same time zone. Should give them some time to get some extra reps in, some extra practice, work on defense. We talked about that about a week ago. The Kings had a bunch of days off. They came back. They gave up like 130, 140 points. So I don't know how much that really helped, but they all talk about home cooking in sports and how that's supposed to help your team. The Kings have a ton of games at home or very, very close. So could be a potential
really
changer.
Need is practice time.
Yeah,
that's what they really, really need right now.
Yep, I agree. All right, guys, we are going to wrap it up here. Is there anything else you want to say, Cal?
Thank you for watching, everybody. We're here for your crying needs. We got the shoulders for you.
Yes. Thank you guys so much for joining us tonight. It was an unfortunate game, but we're happy to see you all in the chat. We love interacting with you all and having a good time. So thank you so much for joining us on another Royal Rebounds podcast. We will see you all Wednesday after the Kings-Wizards game. Keep an eye on the channel. Make sure you guys hit that notification cowbell because we are going to be doing a 2K rebuild very, very soon. And if you hear it there, if you hit that notification cowbell,
Vinny's got some new toys to play with.
You will get notified every time we put out a new video. So thank you guys so much. We'll see you all on Wednesday. And in the meantime, go Kings.